Hello, folks, and welcome to Experience AV. I am Jim Maltese, and with me as ever is.
Oh, Jeremy. It's Jeremy.
Yes, you know Jeremy, of course. How's it going, man?
Dude, so good. So good. Glad to see you. Glad to see you. How's the weather? How's the weather? I gotta start. Like it's always that time of year where it's super dicey
That's
on
right.
your side of the country and it's absolutely gorgeous over here. So how's the weather?
I think the weather's great. I don't know that Arizonians would agree. So it's when I wake up, I try to take my run, and it's like 30s and 40s, but I happen to
Ooh.
love that. Yeah, but it's when it gets cold like that, it's just so quiet. Like especially if you can go out into the woods or something like that, the air is so still. And that's like been one of my goals is to find a spot where I live where I cannot hear a car or I can't hear those friggin' leaf blower that it just goes nonstop. And so whenever I can find just a little patch of quiet in the wintertime outside, I'm in a good way.
So can you find those patches in New
No,
York? It was like what you
no,
just
not.
described sound like a unicorn to me. Like
Do you want to hear something freaky? So last winter, I was building like an igloo type thing with my kids, and I mean, we didn't go too big, just like it was, 4 foot by 4 foot, and they could fit in, I could stick my head in. But when I stick my head in, that's quiet.
it's
That
the
was good.
only moment of silence.
Yes,
So what you're saying is you need to get a portable igloo to stick on your head and run around with.
that's exactly what I'm saying. That's
Being an audio
exactly.
guy, I would think you could come up with something that would be kind of isolating to but let's get back to something. So you said
Yeah.
run. Are you running now? I thought you were biking for a while there.
So apparently, again, where I live, not only is it filled with noises and leaf blowers, but it is also filled with incredibly dangerous tire roads because not dangerous for people. I do the right thing. I wear a helmet. I follow the rules. But like every third time I would go out, I would get a flat tire. And I've replaced the tire. I've replaced the tread. It's just the roads have stuff, rocks. And one time I literally found a screw in my tire. One time it was a piece of construction metal strip or something. And so I got a little shy to the bike because I would be doing, 20 miles, 20, 13 miles or something like that. And so if I'm 6 miles away from the house and I got to walk home, it'll take me a minute. And so I would call my wife, and then Jess would get very upset because she's like, I have to freaking drive out to wherever you are, and you got to get in my car dirty with your stupid bike. And yeah, so I've been running. I've been running a
You,
little bit.
I think you forgot some expletives there that she would probably throw in. I'm
It's
just
best. It's best for everyone.
Yeah, I mean
So
we are
yeah.
broadcasting live. It's on the internet. It's forever. I've
To
heard.
millions and millions.
So you're running, right? So we bike a lot out here in Arizona. We've got, spiky stuff all over the place and lots of dirt and rocks. There are alternatives. There are ways to overcome those tire roads that you mentioned, and
Okay.
you can get tubeless tires. That's a big help. Just like a car, so that's a thing. That's a thing. It's a thing on
Write that
bikes.
down.
Tubeless tires. It's a whole thing. Also, you can get solid tubes. They're not as comfortable as
Okay.
the air cushion tubes, but they're like solid rubber. I have a specialized roll, so it's like a hybrid bike, not quite a road bike, not quite a mountain bike, but it's upright and I
Hmm.
like to ride it. The original tires that came on it, same thing, man. I felt like every other time I was going out, I was replacing a tube. And same thing, hey, Carrie, come pick me up. Expletive, expletive, expletive. She would, come pick me up. Or I'd have to walk home. I actually bought a tire that was like a thorn resistant tire also. So there is definitely some tech out there. And I will say it does two things. It It helps keep the pressure of your tire better than the standard because, I felt like I had to always put a little bit more air in my
Sure.
tubes
Yeah. Yeah.
as
Yeah. For
well.
sure.
So it did a better job of keeping air in the tubes, and I have had like I would say like a 95% reduction in thorns. So I'm just saying because I love riding a bike. It makes me feel like a kid every time I'm on a bicycle, and I want to promote people feeling like a kid as much as possible. So you might want to try it again.
How have we not talked about this before? This is like I legit, my mind is blown. I
Well,
didn't even know that was yeah.
I mean, that's what we do here is we experience stuff and we use AV as an excuse to get together and talk. It's fantastic.
It's awesome, man. That's really awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Well, that sounds cold. Although I will say this, when exercising, whether riding a bike, whether running, man, I like it to be as cold as possible because you're generating all that heat, and the colder it is outside, I feel like it helps regulate everything. But if I'm not doing those things, I don't quite prefer it that cold. So we're in the 60s here in Arizona. 60s, low 70s as a high right now. If we dump down into the 50s, it's a cold night. So this is the time of year that you live here for. The only other update I have, I think I mentioned this before, but I'm so damn excited about it. I'm going to Justin, I've run between taco stands. Well, that's Texas right there. Texas representing. Quick,
I love it.
quick update on the marching band. I may have said
Yes.
this last episode. I'm saying it again. We won state championships in our division. It was phenomenal. I'm so proud of the marching band. And I'm also
Outstanding.
so proud of having my Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and some Saturdays back.
Go Blackhawks, right?
Go
Blackhawks?
Blackhawks. That's right. That's right. Now,
Yeah,
it's going to be
man.
short lived because we're going right into Winter Drumline, which is like this whole acoustic indoor thing, which won't have as much need for me to mix the sound, but I'll help them kind of get it set up and set it to forget it, and we'll have that season this year. But it was an epic experience. Super thankful for it, man.
That's awesome, dude. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, you ready to get
I
into it?
think I think it's about that time. So
All
what are we
right.
talking about today?
I
I
think
thought
we go for it.
I thought the title that you came up with for this show was beautiful, right? Are you homesick at the office or office sick at home? How
Thanks.
cool is that?
That was
That
a good one. That was a good
that's
one. I
poetry.
appreciate it. When it's always fun, one of my favorite parts of the process is ideating with you on like trying to figure out what are we going to talk about, and then we like figure out what we're going to talk about, and we're like, okay, now we got to come up with some sort of catchy title, and that one resonated with me, and if you don't mind, I'll kind of share a little bit of where that title came from, because, to frame it up, right? The whole point of this conversation is, well, frame us up. What is the point of this conversation? What was the topic at hand that drove this title?
Well, we wanted to kind of talk about some of the challenges people are experiencing with the migration back to the office or whatever that looks like now. It's, a hybrid workplace. What are people doing? What are they going to walk into? And what can they do about it? What should they expect? And how can they make things as smooth as possible, AV wise?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there too, because to your point, taking it just even one step back, in the pandemic, all of a sudden, people that were working in the office were working at home, right? Homework,
Something
working
many
from
still
home.
are, right?
Many still are.
Yeah.
But people, I remember before the pandemic, right? There was a huge push for trying to adopt a bit more of a hybrid working style, but it was unproven, untested, unbelieved in to a very large degree. And then boom, 2020 happened, right? Boom, the pandemic happened. And whether you liked it or not, in order for a lot of businesses to keep operating, a number of workers were working from home, even the ones that didn't want to work from home.
Mhm.
I know a bunch of people that, they like that separation of work and home space, and want nothing to do with turning the home space into a work
Yep.
environment.
It gets tough to shut off,
So
right?
really,
Yep.
this is about talking about all of it, right? What it means to work from home, and what kind of emotional, spiritual, physical impact that might have
Yep.
had on you and your family's life, and then also the return to work, right? As things are starting to turn back on. So the title, Homesick at Work and Work Sick at Home, right? So if I think back to prior to the pandemic, I know a lot of people were fighting for and lobbying for an ability to work from home more, right? So that's the idea of homesick while at the office, right? You're at the office, man, I wish I could work from home at least a couple of days a week. That would bring balance to my life, and that would be such a quality of life, quality of life
Improvement. Yeah.
increase, yeah,
Yeah.
improvement, right? So that was the idea of that part of it. And then, okay, now we're here at the pandemic and we're forced to work at home, and you're working from home. Even those of us that did work from home, like you, for example, you work from home. Like, you don't have an office to go
Yeah.
to, and you were doing that before the pandemic happened. So, but then the rest of us, right, that had an office to go to or were going to an office, we were forced to work from home as well. And so boom, there's the other side of the coin. Well, now I'm at home, and I miss the office. I'm office sick. Like, I want to see people. I want to have that kind of interaction that you only get when you're around a whole bunch of other people focused on, moving your company's objectives forward, right?
Yeah.
And I know for me personally, it has been such a such a interesting process of discovery, right? I personally have always adopted a bit of a hybrid working model. I've had the opportunity and benefit to have an office at the office that's dedicated to me, and I can go use that, and I can collaborate with others, and I can have in-person meetings. And then I also have always maintained a home office, so that if I need to really dig in, I really need to do some focus time, I can kind of do it from home. Or, I need to meet the pool, repair guy that, only comes during business hours and never available on the weekends, right? Like, that was some of the benefit of being able to work from home. But then for me, when the pandemic happened and I was working from home all the time, I started to struggle with the blurred line.
Yep.
And for me, the blurred line was, where does home stop and work begin, and where does work begin and home stop? And although I might have been called a workaholic a few times in my life, I will tell you that one of the things I value the most about going to the office is the drive to the office. That 30 minutes, whether you drive, whether you walk, whether you take a bike, it doesn't matter. That 30 minutes of drive time from my house to the office is like personal think time. I can listen to
Yeah.
some music, I can make a phone call. It's this transitional tunnel, if you will, that when you
Yeah.
get out the other side, you're like, all right, I'm here at work and I'm ready to work, and it's work time, right? And there's like a very defined physical separation. And then you get done with your workday, no matter what time it is, even if you worked a couple of extra hours, you get in your truck, or you get in your vehicle, or you get on your bus or your bike, whatever your deal is, and you then transition back through the tunnel. And when you get to the other end, you're at home, and you're like, I've had 30 minutes to decompress and kind of think about the things that I was working on today, or that kind of got me going today. But then by the time you get home, it's like this physical decompression period. Then working from home every day, it was like, man, roll out of bed. There's no physical tunnel to go through. I'm just going right to work, working till who knows how late at night. And then even when you're done and you kind of stumble out, it doesn't really feel like you're at a different place. So that was part of my struggle that I dealt with
Yeah.
during the pandemic, and I am really focused on back to having a little bit more of that hybrid approach. A few days in the office, a couple days at home helps bring that balance for me.
Well, and that like I noticed that as well. And for me personally, I'm such a introvert, I guess you could say, because I internalize so much in my head by default that whereas I would come back from work and after that commute, which I hated, right? Because New York, especially Long Island traffic is just absolutely miserable. Even though it was just a 10-mile drive, it was a long 10 miles. And so I had time to decompress, but that just forced things deeper into my brain. And so now, I take a few breaths or I go for my run in the morning. And so I have that separation there and I have that just mental time. And that's where I find it so easy to meditate when walking or running. Like that's where I just let my mind go and go wild, and I feel really centered afterwards. But even after the day, I get out of my office and I see my wife or my kids, and I'm forced to talk to them, and I find myself talking more about my day, which has been really good actually. And so for me, even though I appreciate the de-stressing value of that commute time, for me personally, talking about the day has been really beneficial to me. Like right on a dime. So that I happen to love working from home. I think it's fantastic. We have all these tools where I still get a sense of camaraderie with my coworkers, and I have a great time with them. But my commute is, the 10-second walk downstairs, and I absolutely love that after doing the other thing for so many years.
That's interesting because I think you've hit on a couple of things for me anyway. That is like your tunnel could be a 10-second walk downstairs. If you can find that way
That
to disconnect, if you can find that way to like put the work behind you and embrace, and then you've got another tool that you're using, which is almost a ritual, right? One of the best rituals. Come home, hey honey, how was your day? Right? Come down the stairs, hey honey, how was your day? And then you start that ritual or that process of talking about your day, and that I think kind of releases those chemicals and starts to get
yeah
you going
yeah
towards the path of being home. So that's
yeah
great. I definitely struggle with that a little bit, especially, my kids are all in high school or graduating high school at this point, so it's a little bit different than having the little ones at home anymore. But for me personally, it's interesting. My old boss, Chris, I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and I hadn't talked to him in a few years, and I asked him how he was doing during the pandemic, and he's one of those guys that's like, I never stopped going to the office. I can't work from home. I refuse to work from home. Like, gotta get up, gotta put on the clothes, gotta go to the office, gotta have. And this guy was more than happy to work a 10, 12, 14-hour day if that's what was necessary. But it was going to happen physically at the office, not in his house, ever, ever, ever,
Mm.
ever, ever. And he just can't wrap his mind around the idea of working from home.
Wow, I can appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not built like that, but I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that.
I have definitely come to enjoy, for me, again, personally, a balance, that
Mhm.
hybrid approach, right? And that's what hybrid work has started to mean to me, is the flexibility to work from the office and the flexibility to work from home, kind of giving me the best of both worlds at
Yeah,
the end of the day.
yeah,
And reflecting on something else that you said, the exercise piece, you're also using your exercise as a way to find that personal quiet time, that personal
yeah,
disconnect time. Because even like that's the other thing about working from an office versus working from home and the commute. The commute, one of the things, like, you're at the office, you're with people, you're at home, you're with people. That commute, that's Jeremy time, right? Like, that's some time to. And often I just wouldn't even listen to music. I would just be quiet and use it as meditative time, like you indicated.
Well, and that's what I found is that my brain is going to find time to bounce things around in there, whether it's at 3 o'clock in the morning or at 6:30 on a run or midday on a hike on the weekends. It needs that time or else I'm not healthy and I can't rest without allowing it to do that. So yeah, I totally hear you on that. And that's what the commute was. I'm much happier now that I have the opportunity to exercise and get that time. But when I was commuting to work, my like I would, if I had to drive somewhere, I'd go into autopilot, miss turns just because my brain was going. It was going. It was doing its thing.
So then, based on your commentary, like during the pandemic, like in the thick of it, life as usual for you. Didn't struggle with it at all.
I love it.
Like at least in terms of the work from home
Yeah,
perspective, all other things
I,
aside
I,
that
I
that
love
came
it.
up.
I will say where it hits is where like when I see you guys taking like so I'm in a remote New York office of level three, and Jeremy is in the mothership in Arizona. And so when you guys do birthday cake or a company hike or the Christmas party or pizza or whatever, I miss that. I
Yep.
miss that. And before the pandemic, when we would come out to do AQAV trainings or whatever trainings, that's where I filled up on that. Like that was intense meeting time for me, and I absolutely loved it. But during the pandemic, I did miss that a lot.
See, man, I think you're starting to touch on something that's really relevant here, which is even the people that are super excited, happy to completely work from home. There's a need. There's a need there to be filled that can only be filled with actually being in the same physical space as your community, right? Whatever that community is, in
Yeah.
this case, your work community. But and I've got some interesting stats that I wanna share.
Yeah, you were talking about that before. Hit me with that.
Yeah, well, before we do that, I want to hit on one more thing around exercise because Justin Watts has some funny comments that he's been
He's the
putting in.
best.
Yeah, love you, Justin. Shout out, man.
Yes,
He put a
big time.
comment in here like, caught himself working 14 to 16 hours and not realizing I was doing it. Lines were blurred beyond recognition there for a while. That's exactly how I felt. Like I couldn't draw the line anymore. It was a big wavy, squiggly line that was very inconsistent every single day. And then his next comment about, having access to your kitchen for lunch did nothing for my waistline. Like I found that I was eating more. I found that I was drinking more. Like I was moving in a very unhealthy direction early on in the pandemic. And so one of the things that I have the pandemic to thank for is getting on the path of daily exercise.
Mhm.
And for me, it started with bike riding because I love to ride bikes. And I would just get out every single morning and ride for 45 minutes to an hour. And it did what you described, right? It did that centering, that meditative, that, you know what, in this time where it feels like home is work and work is home, and I'm having a hard time separating the two, I need to have some focused me time that makes me feel like I'm improving some aspect of my life outside of just continuous work, continuous work, continuous work. And for me, that ended up parlaying into a pretty significant exercise routine that has maintained for the last, I think I'm up to like over a year and a half of not missing a single
Phenomenal.
day of heavy weight training, exercising, and I have very much the pandemic to thank for that. And so just another tool, right? Another tool to, help manage that for me and for those like me, because obviously, one of the things that's super obvious in this conversation is we're not built the same. Some people deal with the work from home paradigm very differently than other folks, and there's ways and tools to manage that one way or the
Yes.
other. All right, so you want to hear some of these statistics?
Hit me. I'm ready. I'm
All
ready.
right,
I'm sitting down. I'm ready.
all right. They're on the internet, so they must be real.
Absolutely.
I can provide sources. The Pulse of the American Worker survey discovered that 87% of employees want to work from home at least one day of the week.
Hmm.
Okay.
It's big.
That made sense. Like pre-pandemic, that's what it felt like to me, was like everybody was like, work from home, work from home. We can work from home. We can still be productive and work from home. And so many employers were like, we don't trust you. Maybe
Yep.
it's because we don't have the tools in place to measure productivity, or whatever the validation around not feeling comfortable letting people work from home. There was a lot of resistance there. Um, Same study, 68% of American workers say that working in office and remotely is the perfect model. So
Two thirds.
I'm right in that group, right? Like that's the majority right there, is saying that hybrid approach. Give me the opportunity to work from the office when I need to work from the office, and work from home when I need to work from home, which I think also suggests that what are we doing in the office, and what are we doing, like what kind of work are we doing at the office, and what kind of work are we doing at home? And you touched on it, right? Why did you want to come to the office? Did you want to come to the office so you could sit on your computer and do the same work that you do every single day?
Nope. Especially, I see people on Teams, like they're a room away. It's just because it's that good a tool. But like you could meet, but they actually prefer being in front of their computer because they have access to everything they need, even though they're a room away.
So let's talk AV for a second.
Okay.
What did that do from an AV perspective, right? One room away, people could get together and have a conversation in person, but instead they would connect via some sort of communication platform. Why?
It's a better experience, I think.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
it, right? You've been saying this for months. Actually, I think you've been saying this, like, well, being such a promoter of work from home, I think you've been saying this for years and years. Like, yeah, we build
I,
technology for your conference rooms, but if you want a good experience, go sit by yourself with your laptop and a headset.
that's been freaking me out for a few years now.
But now the whole rest of the world is like, these conference rooms suck. Like,
Especially with the experience we have now. You and I, we're on a Teams call, right? That's kind of the engine behind this. I see your face. I hear you really well. I see you really well. It is, and we're 3,000 miles apart. This is a great experience. If I need files to show, if we were collaborating on you were helping me troubleshoot OBS stuff, I pulled it right up. You said, no, no, click over to click down. We can't do that in a room. We'd be huddling around a laptop, which would be in a meeting room. So I wouldn't have my three monitors there. We'd be huddled around my little 15-inch laptop, trying to figure that out, like cramming on a. It's a much better experience to share that, to troubleshoot over Teams.
so thank you for taking this little aside journey with me, because it just seems so relevant to what we were talking about, right? It's why are we coming back to the office? And when we do come back to the office, if we do actually have to work and collaborate, and I'm not suggesting you should not work when you come to the office by any means of the imagination, but when you got to collaborate, we got to come up with different ways to facilitate that same type of experience that you get with working from home or
That's it.
working separately. It's not even
Yeah.
working from home, just working from your desk.
Yeah. And I feel like that's been smacking people in the face because they no data. And if we're taking too far a veer off course from the data, let me know.
We're not,
All right. So
I mean, in my
I
opinion.
feel like pre-pandemic people were, and that was one of my lines in CTSD and AQAV and all this stuff. That was one of my lines to be like, when people just accept okay audio. Like we have these huge, beautiful boardrooms. People can kind of hear and they can kind of see people in the room, even though they're like picking up 3 pixels. But that was the norm. It just is what it is. It was okay AV. But then the pandemic hit, and now we have this experience, right? Where I can see your face, and I can't, like, I never understood that. In my CTSD class in 2001, Scott Scherer was on the big screen talking about parallax theorem and, mimicking eye contact and being able to see. Like, I worked for a real estate company who demanded this face to face for all their conference rooms because they wanted to literally see people sweat uh, during the interview to see, I'm going to spend $1 billion with you. I want to see what's up. So I understood what good video conferencing could be. And then most of the conference rooms, it was people that were like
This
4
big.
pixels. Yeah. And you sounded fine. The audio, we did pretty good. Audio I hear. Well, anyway, so people got used to okay audio pre-pandemic. During the pandemic, everyone got used to this experience, this conference experience where I see you, I hear you. And now that we got used to this, people are going back to the work. And now they're like, what is this expletive?
Nice.
I can kind of hear you. I sound like the intern who's on their laptop down the hall on a headset. He's the best sounding person in the room. The other conference room in Tokyo, I can barely understand what they're saying. The meeting room in San Francisco, oh, that's kind of flaky. I can't see anyone for anything, and that's what people are coming back to. And now I think people are starting to get, oh, we need to pay attention to this audio stuff, and I think that's why people are so crazy about Smart Gallery coming out in Teams and Zoom, because that's gonna bring this experience to a meeting room.
Totally. I was just, as you were explaining that, I was just thinking about Smart Gallery, and I don't recall who it was. It might have been Jeff or Fred, or I can't remember. It might have even been you. I can't remember. But I remember years back, years ago, somebody saying, how cool would it be if there was a way to get everybody's head and face on the screen? And what did they call it? It was I think it was screen equity was the word that was
That's cool.
used. Was how do you give equitable space to every person on the screen in a meeting room situation? And I'm super excited that we've got big old camera sensors with lots and lots of pixels so that we can start to create this situation. I mean, I
Yeah.
love the innovation that's coming out of the industry to help try to drive us towards what you just described, a much better experience. Because I think, coming back to a comment I made earlier, everybody had to work from home. And what happened? All of the employers were like, oh, I guess it does work. Not only does it work, but in a lot of cases, it works better. It works better, especially when you're thinking about it from an AV and a conferencing perspective, and then having the tools at your fingertips, right? Not just being able to communicate with people, but then that collaboration of software and tools that you're able to see and share and really, really build off of. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good little jaunt there, my friend.
Yeah.
You ready? You ready for some more percentages?
Hit me.
According to the Remote Work and Compensation Survey, only 8% of remote employees would be willing to work in office full time after the pandemic phases out. 8, 0, 8. Yeah, less than 10. Single digit percentage there.
Ooh.
But it's worth noting remote employees, right?
Oh,
So
okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
8% of remote employees. But I mean, think about the increase of remote employees that happened because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, there was a remote population pre-pandemic that exploded during the pandemic, and then doing a survey during the pandemic, only 8% of them are like, yeah, I'd be willing to come back to the office full time. it speaks to that hybrid model, right? It speaks to
Well,
the need for the flexibility of working from home and the increase in quality. I remember talking to you. You mentioned the commute. I remember talking to our mutual friend, she who shall not be named, but used to
yes.
work and still works for the financial industry. What
Yes.
lives in New Jersey and used to commute into Manhattan. And I remember talking to her and being like, yeah, so I had to drive, 45 minutes to get 52 miles down the road in Arizona. And she's like, fuck you, Jeremy,
Yeah.
first of all. Oh, sorry. Expletive you,
Excellent.
Jeremy. Yeah.
We're talking.
And she's like, I go 6 miles and it takes me anywhere between 1 and 3 hours
Yep.
depending on the situation, and that's on a bus, right? And I remember thinking back then, I'm like, that makes no sense. You're losing a ton of productivity from your employees by making them do that commute back and forth.
Big time. But the interesting thing to me too is this was a trend even before the pandemic, right?
Oh
Like in
yeah.
the 50s, everyone had an office. Now they're sliding into that open office. Now they're sliding into hot desking. And so you're taking office space away from workers. You still need meeting rooms, for sure. There's a lot of productivity that happens there, and training and instilling culture and everything. But that trend to move people to their home offices, or at least not like a dedicated office space, has been happening for decades.
It's interesting. I totally agree with you. It's changed a lot, and some people would say that open office experiment was a failure. I'm
I
sure. I'm
don't know
sure.
how anything gets done.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Miserable. Yeah.
So, same survey: 8% of remote employees only would be willing to work in office full time. On the other hand, 48% of workers want to work remotely permanently in the hybrid model statistics. The remaining 44% out of that, right? So we're 48, 8, the remaining 44% wish to work from home part time. The ones that were, full time remote during that time, so again, that one's a little bit more split. You definitely have a huge part of that. In fact, the majority is saying, I want to stay home permanently. This is better. I can do my job and I can be closer to my family and to my home and the things are that are my personal life, right?
Right.
And doing what you do, right? Comfortable. So that I think that speaks to the group of people that kind of fit nicely into that. All right, here's some more interesting statistics. Another hybrid work stat from Stanford Institute of Economic Policy Research found that 55% of respondents wanted to divide their time in office and at home. 25% said they wanted to work remotely full time, and the remaining 20% want
Oh,
to work exclusively in the office.
interesting.
So same kind of statistic, right? Different group, but showing again the majority want some sort of hybrid model available to them. They don't want to be forced into one or the other. They want that flexibility 100%. I think, technology aside, that's one of the biggest trends that happened with the pandemic is, you've got to enable your people to be able to work from where they want to work. You got to meet, and the what are they calling it? The great resignation.
Oh yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
heard of, have
Oh yes.
right? Driven by now all of a sudden, all of these companies globally are like, I don't care where you live, where you want to live, we are going to give you the tools necessary to be productive anywhere in the world. Yeah, I've read a really good article recently about like it's encouraging that kind of more nomadic lifestyle that I think the article said was once reserved for like um, engineers, right? Engineers, I can't remember the word that they use, like unique engineers. And now you're seeing a huge group of people starting to embrace that concept of I can live anywhere. And if you don't like that, Mr. Employer, I'm just going to go find another employer because there's a whole bunch of them out there that are embracing it at breakneck speed at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild, man. It's a different time out there.
Yeah. And I mean, what's that gonna do? So this is happening. This is the world we're in now. I have friends who still work in the city, but their companies would take up 20 floors of a high rise in Manhattan, and now they only renewed the lease on 4. Like, what's that going to do to cities? What's that going to do to real estate prices? Like, what is it? What's it going to do? And then, like, technology wise, what is a floor, an office floor at a bank going to look like? Right? It used to be 85% workstations and maybe 15% meeting rooms here and there. Is that going to be like 20% workstations and meeting rooms everywhere, or like what's that going to do to how the percentage of real estate dedicated to meeting space and the percentage of real estate dedicated to personal workspace?
So that I've got a really interesting piece of data to support that because I think it goes back to the question I asked earlier, which is why are we coming into the office? What are you doing in the office? And I'm asking the question, right? And even you kind of stated it, like what you missed. Why are you coming? Why do you want your people to come into the office? What's the
Culture.
business? What's the
Well,
business outcome? What's the
yeah,
objective?
it's group activities, trainings, culture improvements, company meetings, right? Not certainly not personal work.
Not personal work, not independent work by any
Yeah,
means of the
independent work, independent
imagination.
work. That's better. That's better.
And culture improvement or just events, right?
Yeah,
Opportunities for relationship building,
yeah.
in-person relationship building. So
IRL
check in
in
real
real,
life.
real life.
It's a real deal. So check this out. This report from Accenture reveals that Generation Z workers, colloquially, did I even say that right? Did I say that?
Colloquially, I think there was an extra e. Colloquially.
Colloquially, yep. We can't erase that, can we? That's gonna stay right
Yeah,
there.
yeah. No, we'll fix it in post. We'll send it to the editor.
Yeah, no, I don't think we will. Colloquially referred to referred to as Zoomers. How funny is
I
that?
love
Gen Z is referred
I
to as
love that.
Zoomers. Do you think Zoom had anything to do with that? Do you think they were
No,
like, do
no,
you think
no.
they
I'm sure they
lobbied
hate
for that?
it. Yes, they're pushing that so hard.
They're
Memes
like
out the
Zoomers.
wazoo.
We got a whole generation. Nailed it, right? Not like the Teamsters. No, that kind of doesn't work. See where I was going there? Come on. Come on. All
I'm a
right.
New Yorker. Of course.
So just union you no, we're not even going to go there.
Right,
People are going to dig this
right.
up and hold it against us 20 years from now. All right. So Accenture, Generation Z workers known as Zoomers want some form of in-office work. This is our up and coming generation. Despite growing up in an era where social media is significantly dominant, more than 75% of Gen Z respondents wish to interact with coworkers directly.
I see that with my daughter.
Isn't that
Last year,
great
when
though?
she was homeschooled, she yearned for being in person class and seeing people in real life, IRL. She need and she is completely a digital native. And so seeing people like in the flesh is a treat, you know? That's got to come into play because us old folks, we tasted it. So we kind of know what's there, but I feel like the Zoomers don't have that experience, and so maybe it's like they get a taste of it. It's like going to a concert when you go into the office.
Are,
You get
are,
that like congregation feel and vibe. So I get that.
well, and that's it, right? I think that speaks to that's the up and coming workforce. So coming back to your question, let me give you the rest of this, then we'll
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
touch on this. By the way, are you a Gen Xer or a baby boomer? Where do you fall?
Baby boom. What the
Well,
crap,
you
dude?
said us old people. I
No,
know
no,
you weren't
I'm
talking
a Gen
about
X,
me.
Gen Xer all the way. Baby boomer. Baby boomers like born after World War II.
I
Bro.
mean, technically, all of us were born after World War
I'm
II,
doing
but
well played. Well played. Mm,
yeah, yep, yeah,
yes,
that one. All right,
yes, yes, good.
but yeah, no, I know you're not a boomer. That was a low blow. All right, so check it. 75% of Gen Z respondents wish to interact with coworkers directly. 68% of baby boomers have the same sentiment. So the generation behind us, right, or in front of us, or however you would say it,
The Zoomers and the boomers.
the the Zoom booms. That's right. Only 66% of our generation, the Gen X's, want that in office work return. So interesting that our generation is the lowest out of all of them, and that the new up and coming digital native, what I would say interacts with their friends and people more through digital devices than any other generation before,
Mm.
is craving that in person. Like, first of all, that just gives me hope.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That just gives me
Yeah.
significant hope. That there is an incredible intrinsic need and desire to connect with people, um, the old school way, IRL, if you will, right? Right. But coming back to the point, you are going into the office for a different experience now. You're going at, what would you call it, a concert?
Yes.
And you ask the question, so what's going to happen to the real estate that used to be 20 floors of 20 floors of cubicles and office and workspace? My thoughts, or my prediction, if I be so bold, would be one of two answers. You're going to start to see more large meeting type spaces, congregation, concert type
Yeah.
spaces, right?
Multi-purpose halls, totally flexible with
Yep.
killer AV systems.
Yeah, almost event spaces,
Yeah.
more event space type stuff, large gathering type spaces that are more decked out with technology than ever before, because why? We need to make sure that we are being inclusive of all of the, if there's a large percentage of people here that don't want to have anything to do with that in-office experience, but they need to be included. They need to have the option to come in. My second prediction: what happens if they end up turning commercial space into more living space? What if that ends up turning into like rezoned and used for almost like, the apartment above the pizza parlor style mindset where, well, if more people are working from home and population, although I did read an interesting statistic the other day that
That's
our population growth is starting to slow.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, I don't think it's slowing that much. I think we're still producing plenty of new people, but it's just interesting because what's the
Well, that
relationship of growing population, more people working from home? Is it that we need to take some of that existing commercial real estate space and convert it into habitable space that technically all also duos as your workspace because you're working from home now? Just
that's
throwing it out there.
crazy. I mean, to your first point, I see uh, several of our enterprise clients saying we need a showcase space where we can attract new talent, and it needs to have wow factor. So I see that left and right. But it's just funny when you said the apartment over the pizza shop, like that's Bronx, Manhattan, left and right. But like, well, who would want to do that for like an office? And then you start to think about places in Manhattan, like.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, just think about like
Yeah.
lofts, right? Blow out a couple of floors, turn it into like really sexy, cool, modern loft space that is
That's incredible.
rentable for residential use because so many people are working from home now. That's interesting.
Very interesting.
I was thinking about something you just mentioned around the what'd you call it? The showcase. The
Hmm.
showcase for people. One of the clients that we just spoke to, I think you were with me on the call about the showcase, going to be showcasing work from home technologies.
No.
Like,
And you know
here's
what's
our
funny? A lot of people
conference
think it's
room, but
them.
then here's our 14 options for you to work from home, right? And I thought that was very telling to where everybody's head is at, where leadership and all these organizations are like, no, this isn't some passing fad. This is here to stay, and we need to be ready to go. And this is a part of who we are now.
Yeah. And we need to look and sound good. We need to,
Uh,
and it was so funny. I was thinking of someone else before, but now that you brought up that sales call we were on, uh, I love the fact that they needed to showcase a home office as well as an airport office. I'm like, how
yes,
that is so cool. I loved that term, airport office. That was
there is a product coming out that I can't actually talk about, but I will say in the realm of trying to create a consistent experience no matter where you're at, whether you're in an office, whether you're at home, whether you're in an airport, whether you're in a coffee shop. There are some people that are thinking about how to create that experience, not just from an audio and video perspective, but as you know, part of that video perspective is what's behind me, and not just good quality,
right,
microphone and
right, right.
speakers or headset, but the acoustic space around it. So I'm looking forward to being able to share some information on that, but it's getting a lot of attention
Hmm.
on how to build these experiences no matter where you are at.
Have you seen that video of the guy who made a portable green screen and he had 10 zooms on water slides on like a dirt bike and so you see his setup. He's like it's made out of like PVC pipe. He made a backpack with a green screen, and he has the laptop right in front of him, and so you see him riding a dirt bike, like a motorbike or something. You see that shot, and then it cuts to his Zoom call where he's going, but you know. He looks good because the laptop camera is right there and the green screen is behind him, so he's got a professional background going on. It is
I have not seen
so
that, but
good.
that's
It was great.
hilarious.
Yes.
That
They did
is
a water
hilarious.
slide, they did a motorbike. It was pretty good. I mean, hopefully that company is going to come out with something like that. That'd be pretty fun.
It's going to be interesting, man. The next couple of years are going to be really interesting as we kind of rush towards building solutions and products that help support this type of model.
Yeah. And getting serious though, and bringing that experience, we've seen with a lot of our enterprise clients a migration away from the easy to deploy video bar codecs to table microphones because the experience isn't there.
Because the audio experience isn't
The
there in that
audio
particular
experience
case.
is yes, and,
That's
and I
awesome.
found that yeah, it's
How
great
we've been
because it's
fighting
moving
that
to
fight.
good.
Yeah, we've been fighting that fight for like ever since I joined the industry.
Yeah,
And then all these ceiling mics came out and all these bars came out and people are like, "No, it looks better and it's
yeah, looks
aesthetically
better,
pleasing." And it's like,
table's clean.
"Oh, you're not going to hear, paper shuffling. I want to hear paper shuffling in high definition clarity, right? That's where we're at, you know? It's interesting. It's interesting. That's
Yeah,
interesting
people
to
want that.
me. Just a full 180 back to audio, and audio's king, right?
Yeah,
Audio is king. At the end of the day, I need you to sound like Jim, not some
yeah,
ghostly robotic version of it.
yeah.
Him, you. I don't. Let's see. Do I have any other interesting statistics here? I think we got about 5 minutes left in our hour. The study also discovered, so this is the Stanford study. It also discovered that certain employees who tried to work from home would get lonely after a while. That or they would fall victim to one of the three enemies of remote working. The three enemies. This sounds.
The three horsemen. Does it say who the three enemies are?
Oh, it does. You got any
Really?
guess? You got any guesses?
Video games,
Uh,
scrolling,
we can go video
porn.
games.
I don't know.
So, wow,
What
wow.
was
Technically,
that?
you can get all of that like in one experience at this
It's true.
point, especially with
It's
VR. But
true.
no. So, no, the three enemies of remote working: the bed. Just people want to sleep. They want to sleep, Jim. It's not some weird,
All right. All right.
live porn situation.
Lame.
The television, which
Yeah.
could be video games, right? Anything that's a screen. I almost lump like social media into just devices, screens
It's
in general, right? Or like the Watts said, the fridge. The fridge is the third enemy of remote working, right? As a result, some just decided to return to the office after a while.
I think that study needs more data points because are these people living alone? Are they with families? Are they with roommates or loved ones? And also, especially working in a city, I find working from home to actually be healthier because when I did work in the city, the vast majority of people would go out to lunch or get lunch from a deli or something like that, which is not healthy at all. But if you're eating from home, you need some discipline, but I had a higher likelihood of eating healthily than working at an office.
And that simply because you wouldn't go out and you would make your
Yeah,
own food? Like that's
exactly.
what it
Yeah,
came down to, right?
yeah, yeah.
I agree. I definitely think I eat healthier when I eat at home and, you know, or if I'm going to the office, the best way to eat healthy is to bring food with me that I prepared at my
Yes,
home, right?
exactly, exactly.
Kind
Yeah,
of coming back to that concept.
yeah.
All right, so I got one more for you. We've got like three
Yes.
minutes left. Probably not enough time to get into it, but it's an interesting thought, or it's an interesting thing to consider as it relates to remote work, and it's around compensation,
Mm.
right? So hybrid work statistics regarding compensation are that 94% of employees believe payment should be determined by skill set, not geographic location, which I think is really interesting. 9% of them already had moved to a different place, making it impossible to return to the office. So
Oh wow.
there is so much to unpack right there, right? So number one, you're working from home, you're remote now. Well, now I'm working from home, so it doesn't matter as long as I've got a solid internet connection. I can move anywhere. I'm just going to move because I work from home now.
Right.
And so, of course, right, it shouldn't matter, but think about geographic location. Think about the same job for a company based in San Francisco or New York compared to the same job for somebody based in Albuquerque or Idaho or, a potentially lower region within the country where the pay scale for the same job is a little bit less. Like, I think that's a really interesting element with the remote working side, and it almost comes back to where the company's physical location is or headquarters is, right? As a determining factor. But
Yeah.
will this help drive a different mindset when it comes to employers in terms of how they pay and price? I mean, just think about the difference of real estate cost in Manhattan compared to real estate in Arizona, right? Cost of living in these regions have a huge impact, but now you have a workforce that is like, oh, well, I don't need to work for you. I can go to work for a company out of New York or a company out of San Jose that pays more money, simply because the cost of living in those particular areas necessitates a higher wage for the same job. That's a whole nother level.
That's wild.
Additionally,
And we're seeing a mass exodus, right? I mean, people are fleeing
well,
California, New York, left and right.
and that's, I mean, so physically, right? You're saying a
Physically.
physical exodus.
Yeah.
Tied that with the great resignation, because one of the big drivers there is I can go do the same job for a company that's based in another physical location and make more money,
Yep.
which supports the idea that it shouldn't be about geographic location. It should be about skill set. So will this help drive a leveling of compensation based on skill set as opposed to the geographic component that often plays a huge role?
It's so complicated. There's so many pieces to that. Like my, yeah, it's so complicated.
So additionally, 83% said that they would leave their companies if they lower their compensation for working remotely. These return to work statistic facts didn't stop some companies, such as the Big G, from significantly cutting remote worker salaries due to their geographical location.
And that's where it gets a little slimy though, because I don't understand why you would lower their wages because they just got a whole lot cheaper to support as a company. The overhead per per worker for someone working from home is much less than someone working from an office. So actually they should get a little bump if they're keeping all things even.
Well, and since we're on this particular topic, I've got even some more data here around employees that feel that their employers should be providing resources to help them set up a home office. Right? So it goes
Yeah,
down this
yeah,
it goes
yeah.
down this
It,
this rabbit hole.
yeah. And that so that might justify less salary if they're getting their internet paid for and their printer and their all, all that overhead stuff. But if you don't get the overhead stuff, then
Yeah,
why, why would your wage change?
34% of employees said their employers should provide resources to help them set up a home office. Another 33, and see, that's interesting because it's like, what resources, right? Obviously,
Yeah,
you got to provide a compute, you got to provide monitors, you got to provide the tools necessary to do the job.
yeah.
But then, like, what about subsidizing expenses related to the physical real estate that it requires to set up a home office that you might not have had before? And I'm thinking to like some of the really tight apartments, especially in big cities, Manhattan, San Francisco. These are tiny apartments that people are paying premiums for. I really don't have the space to set up a home office in
Yeah.
my 800 square foot apartment, you know?
My closet, my closet of an apartment.
Yeah, what else does this
Yeah,
say?
those are hard. Those are hard.
Well, see, and
Those are
that's what
hard.
I found interesting about this topic and just looking up some of the data that was out there to support like how the population is feeling about hybrid
Hmm.
work is, man, there's a lot to it that much more than just the AV technology being able to support, I think coming all the way back to that point, I'm grateful because if anybody was questioning the need for AV technology prior to the pandemic, it is the only way to enable the remote work
Absolutely.
experience and to create kind of a next generation, if you will, colleague experience at the end of the day. But man, that's just a piece of it. It's quite an emotional consideration and compensation and just so much.
Yeah.
Well, my dude, I think we've reached our hour.
That
We've
was
stayed
that
we've
was that
stayed
felt
an
good. That
hour.
was a fun one. That was a great topic.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out and chatting with me. I love that we weren't aligned on how we feel about working from home versus
Yep.
working from the office, which I appreciate so much because it provided such great perspective, man. So I think my takeaway is we need to get you out here for a party.
That sounds great. That sounds awesome.
I like it.
Awesome.
All right, man. Well, thanks for your time, and everybody, thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate the viewership, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Indeed. Have a very happy New Year, everyone.
Ooh, happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays, happy New Year.
All right. See you later.